Have you ever wondered how car companies offer 0% financing? Like, why would a bank give you a loan and charge no interest? In this video, I'll explain to you what car dealers don't want you to know. First, you have to understand what a subvented rate is. Now, when car dealers advertise certain interest rates to finance their cars, what's happening is they're basically making a deal with the lenders and they are buying down the rate. That's known as a subvented rate. So the car manufacturer is prepaying a portion of the interest to the lender, and this way they can advertise low interest rates to you, and that's how car manufacturers compete with each other. They're trying to give you an incentive to go with their cars over their competitors. And when they offer a 0% financing, the car manufacturer is buying down the rate all the way till 0%. So they're essentially prepaying the interest to give you that interest-free loan. So basically, there is no such thing as a 0% loan. It's the auto manufacturer prepaying that interest in a subvented rate to make the effective rate 0% for you as the buyer. Now, sometimes you'll also see cash incentives. So an automaker will give you a bigger rebate if you buy the car cash. So what they're doing is they've set a certain budget where they can discount the car. Either they will give you that in the form of a rebate if you are buying the car cash, or if you take the financing option, you won't get that cash rebate. You may still get a small rebate from the manufacturer, but in most cases, you'll get a larger rebate if you buy the car cash compared to if you're going to do the financing. So if you take that 0% financing, you're essentially giving up a potential discount you could have gotten on the car in order to get an interest-free loan. But in most cases, financing a car is still the better way to go, because if you have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 cash, you can invest that and earn a lot more by investing it into stocks or cryptocurrencies, or maybe putting it towards a down payment to buy a property that you can then rent out and get some cash flow, compared to putting it into a car to try and save maybe a few $1,000s in a rebate and some interest. The cash is much better spent into something that will actually earn you money later, and that will cancel out any difference you think that you're saving by buying the car cash for a rebate or some small interest savings. Now, let's say you're super wealthy, you've got a ton of cash on hand, you've got a ton of investments, you don't really care, you just don't want to get another loan. You can actually still finance the car for 0% on a 1-year term. So you can keep your cash in the bank, pay no interest, you'll have a very short finance term, so your payments will be quite large. But what's happening is, I used to work as a finance manager, and I used to do something where I would actually take the reserve, which is essentially a kickback that the bank gives to the dealer, and I would buy down the rate for only 1 year so that the customer could finance the car at 0% and basically keep their cash in the bank. Typically, wealthier customers who have a lot of cash want to keep their cash. They understand that a car is basically a big piece of metal that goes down in value. So if they can keep their cash and not pay any interest, 90% of the time the customer would still go for that. So if you're buying a car cash, ask your finance managers if you can finance the car with no interest for 1 year. A lot of finance managers don't know that this is possible, but it can be fantastic if you want to keep your cash in the bank and still pay no interest. And for the car dealer, they obviously want to finance because they have volume bonuses with the lenders. They much prefer to finance a car compared to selling it for a cash deal. Typically, the only thing it will cost you is around a $50 lien registration fee. Other than that, you are paying no interest. Now, one of the real benefits in a 0% interest loan is any accessories or add-ons or extended warranty or anything you're adding on to the car. Those can now be financed and you're not paying any additional interest on those. What some customers do is, if there is an interest rate and they want to add some accessories or anything like that, they'll actually pay a down payment to cover those, so they're not financing those amounts and paying interest on them. But with a 0% loan, any additional things that you're going to be adding on will not have any interest charge on those. So that's where the interest rate being 0 can be very beneficial, because you're not paying any interest on even the accessories you add on to the car. Now, here's a very interesting scenario that comes up a lot. You have a 0% loan, you also have a cash rebate available if you're going to buy the car cash. Now, what a lot of dealers won't tell you is you can actually finance the car and still get the cash rebate. You just won't get the subvented rate. You'll typically get a regular bank rate. So I'm going to break down 2 scenarios, and I used to come across this all the time. So here we have 2 scenarios. Let's say you're looking at a nice shiny new car, and you can do it with a cash deal, or you can get a 0% financing loan. So our car is $35,000. We're not putting any money down, and our sales tax is 13%. So it's real easy to calculate that. You're going to take the $35,000. We're going to multiply that by our taxes, which is 13% here. It gives us a total of $39,550. And if I divide that by 60 months, that's going to give us a payment of $659.17. Okay, we're not paying any interest, and the rate is a 0% loan there. Now, let's say they do have a cash rebate, and the cash rebate is $4,000. So now our car is $31,000. We got that $4,000 cash rebate, still putting nothing down, but now we have to finance it at 4.89%, and we're still going to do a 16-month term. Our sales tax is 13%. If we calculate that, we can see that the payment comes to $659.30, so almost exactly the same as the 0% loan without the discount. So basically the savings you're getting makes up the difference in interest, making your effective payment the same. Now, if you were to look at these two scenarios, which one would you say is better? The 0% or the higher interest rate with a bigger discount? Because in the end, the payment's gonna be exactly the same. The total you're gonna pay throughout the entire term is exactly the same, there's a few pennies difference. So which scenario is better? Is it scenario 1 or scenario 2? Well, the truth is, it's much better to go with scenario 2. Why is that? First of all, look at our purchase prices, right? This is the total to finance, also known as cap cost. That's the amount that we're going to be submitting to the bank to get a loan for the customer. Without the $4,000 discount, you're starting with a cap cost of $39,550, but with that $4,000 off and our taxes, we're starting at $35,030. So there's a significant difference in the cap cost. So right off the bat, the loan amount is less. Now, remember, car loans are open loans. You can always pay them off sooner to save yourself some interest. So that 4.89%, if we take a look at the amortization schedule, we can see how much interest is charged per year. So in the first year, it's going to be $1,572. The second year is $1,255. Third year, $922. So it gets lower year after year. They charge the majority of the interest in the first years. Now, if you decide to pay the car off a little bit sooner, you'll actually save some interest. So that total that you pay throughout the entire time will drop. Right now, our totals are $39,550 for the 0% or $39,558 for the interest rate, but with the $4,000 off. So it's only $8 more. If you pay that car off sooner, you can save significant amounts of money by actually making larger payments and therefore saving yourself a portion of that $4,528 of the interest that you're paying over the next 5 years. So that's the first reason. You can pay the car off sooner and save yourself some interest, but there's an even bigger reason. See, what happens is basically, let's say in year 2, right? So we started the car off in January of 2025. Let's say it's now January of 2027. We decide, you know what, life has changed and I need a different car. I gotta trade this car in sooner. At this point, we owe $21,465 on the car because we started with a cap cost of $35,000. Now, what if the car dealership decides your car is worth $21,000, right? If we take the 0% loan and take that $39,550, we divide that by the 60 months again, so this gives us our monthly payment. We multiply that by 36 months because there's still 3 years left on that 5-year term. We owe $23,730. But if we take the interest rate at 4.89% with the $4,000 discount, at that very same time, we only owe $21,465. So if I subtract the $21,465, that's a difference of $2,265. So we owe $2,265 less in January of 2027 because our starting cap cost was lower. So even though in the end, if you ride out the entire term, you're gonna pay the same thing, by starting off with a lower cap cost, it puts you into a better position later if you wanna trade the car out. If the car is only worth $21,000, if we took the higher interest rate with the bigger discount, we're only negative about $465. So we could just pay that in a down payment and not roll any negative equity into our new car. But if we owe $23,730 and they're only giving us $21,000, we now have $2,730 that we're gonna have to roll into our new car loan in the form of negative equity. And you wanna always avoid negative equity because you don't wanna be paying off for your last car while you're paying for your new car. It's just a bad financial decision. So in these two scenarios, you'll wanna go with scenario 2, because in scenario 2, even though you're paying some interest, and if you decide to keep the entire 5-year term, you're paying the same thing in the end. But if you pay it out sooner, you can save some interest. Or if you want to trade the car out sooner, you're going to have a lower balance left on your loan, which means you have less chance of negative equity. What about if we want to put some money down? Like, let's go ahead and say we're going to put down also on top of that $2,000 down. Okay, let's recalculate that. Now, if we go into January of 2027, look, we only owe $20,239 now. That $21,000 are going to give us as a trade-in value. We now have about $700 in positive equity we can put towards our new car. So we are in a much better position by taking a deeper discount up front with that cash rebate, paying some interest, putting a little bit of money down. We're in a much better positive equity position down the line should we want to trade the car in sooner. This scenario, I saw it break down this many times when working at Hyundai, because Hyundai a lot of times will offer 0% on certain cars. At the time of making this video, they have it on the Ioniq 5. I've also seen Cadillac has 0% financing on some of their models for 60 months. So if you're looking at a 0% loan, you'll want to also ask your salesperson if there's a cash rebate and if you can actually finance the car with that cash rebate. And you'll want to break it down. If essentially the payment is more or less the same, it's within a few dollars, take the option where you're going to get the deeper discount with the cash rebate, even though there's an interest rate. Because like I said, you can pay it off sooner. Or if you want to trade the car in back sooner, you're in a better position because your remaining balance will be less, which reduces the chances of being in a negative equity position. You may even have positive equity and you want to put down maybe $1,000 or $2,000. So you're ahead of the game. You're not going to regret your decision later. A lot of folks end up rolling negative equity car after car. They end up taking huge loans for cars that are not worth anything of what their loan is, which puts them at a financial risk should the car be written off and if they don't have the gap insurance, which will cover the difference between what they owe and what the car is worth. Plus, you don't want to pay significantly high payments and still be paying for previous cars, even though the car you're driving is worth less. So it's best to avoid negative equity as much as possible. Tons of people make that mistake and it puts them into a very bad financial position. So what are my final thoughts? 0% is absolutely real. It's basically the car manufacturers prepaying the interest to the lenders to offer you a 0% loan. And either they'll give you that discount upfront in a rebate, or they'll put that towards a subvented rate to buy it down to make it zero. So essentially you're forfeiting a potential discount to get a lower interest rate. And if you are a cash buyer, ask your dealership if you can actually finance the car for 1 year at 0% and still get the cash rebate. Some dealers will actually have this option. And you'll also want to think about car depreciation. I recommend you stick to 5 years or less. That's a 60-month term. I did do a full video on leasing versus financing, so check that out if you haven't already. My name is Baz. I've been a high performer in sales and financial services in the automotive industry. And my goal with this channel is to explore and share information with you when it comes to cars and finance. If that sounds interesting to you, please hit that like button, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.